To me, very short and simple, I'm not a fan of this strategy at all. I would not do this myself. Eddie, should I buy a property that I one day might move into? So maybe I'll rent it out for the first 1 or 2 or 3 years, and then we might potentially move into it later. To me, very short and simple, I'm not a fan of this strategy at all. I would not do this myself. I've worked with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients, and some of them, I'd probably say there's been about at least 30 or 40 of them at least that have come to me over the years and basically said, Eddie, I live in Sydney right now. We're thinking about the wife and family and kids. We're thinking about potentially moving over to Brisbane or Perth or Gold Coast. Really think it's a good idea that we can buy a property that we can invest in now and maybe rent it out for 1 or 2 or 3 years and then have the ability to move into it if we do move over to Queensland or Perth, because we are considering it. A few clients have been successful with this strategy. I personally would not recommend doing this whatsoever. And the reason is, the fundamental underlying reason, which I'll elaborate more on in a second, is that it brings too much emotion into the property transaction and buying that said property. What I mean by that is, I've worked with clients that I've, as an example, have shown them phenomenal properties that were 50,000, 80,000, almost 100,000 under what they were worth. If they bought them, they would have made 80,000 on the way into them. Because they had the emotion brought into it, they were like, Eddie, I've got a family of 3 kids, or 2 kids, wife, etc. It's got to be a 4-bedroom house minimum. It's got to have multiple living areas. It's got to have, 2 bathroom, 2-car garage. It's got to have a certain square meter of land. It's got to have this, it's got to have that. And then they're like, but I also want it to be under market value. But I also want it to have a really good rental yield. But I also want it to be in this particular location. And as we go through the brief more and more, many of the times they have to let go of certain things in their criteria because it's just not realistic at all. They want a property that's, 4-bedroom with multiple bathrooms, but they want it to cost under $100,000, which is impossible. It's just absolutely crazy. In the past, every time I've ever seen someone try this strategy where they're, having in the back of their mind that they might move into the property in 2 or 3 or 4 years, they do not have great results. I would not recommend this. What instead I would recommend is that if you think you might move to this location, let's say you're in Melbourne and you want to move to Brisbane, solely do the investment first. And then if you move over there, as an example, just simply rent a place until you then find a place later on that you actually will know is the right place to actually buy to live in. If you're in Sydney or Melbourne and you might move to Brisbane or Perth or that other state, like the odds are you don't know that state very, very well to begin with anyway. If you did, then you probably wouldn't, you might not be using a buyer's agent to begin with, because you would already know a lot about the area in which place you want to buy in. The best way to do it would essentially be move over there, as an example, rent a place, get a feel for the location, get a feel for, which suburbs that you like, which suburbs that you want to move into. Even if you're thinking 3 years ahead and you're going to be saying, look, let's buy a property to invest in, odds are you might want to have to fly there, as an example. That could complicate things to actually see the location, see the area. And if you're trying to condense all that into a trip, as an example, that's 1, 2, 3, or 4 days or a week, you're just trying to do 2 different things at once. Don't try to invest and then try to look for a place to live in either. You either do one or the other. If you're trying to do too many things at once, like you'll just be mediocre at all things. The end game, as an example, is to create financial freedom and create a life that you want. If it's through property, if it's through whatever it is, but in this case, we're talking about buying investment properties. Then focus on making money through it first, through buying the right property. Don't focus on, I want to buy it, but then I also want to maybe move into it. I also want it to be in this location. I'm also only open to this one. Then that way I'm being more narrow-minded and not open to this other types of properties as well, or properties on smaller blocks of land. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comment below, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.